Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My dear elders, scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. يقول الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. Allah says in the Holy Quran, describing the muttaqeen, the pious people, the God-conscious people, they are those who control their anger, who pardon others, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah loves the good doers. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We extend our condolences to the Holy Messenger of God, to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, to all our Imams, to our living Imam, to all the Muslims, and to all brothers and sisters in this majlis, on the occasion of the Shahada, the martyrdom of our seventh Imam, Mūsā ibn Ja'far Al-Kāẓim, salamullahi alayhi. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He may grant us His ziyarah, visiting Him in this dunya, and His shafa'ah in akhirah, and that inshallah we may be grouped with Him in this world and in the hereafter. In the time that I have, inshallah, I will try to share some things to help us know more about this Imam, and maybe refresh our memories on things that we probably already know. Knowledge of the Imams, knowledge about the Imams, obviously it falls under beliefs, under aqa'id. And arguably, aqa'id and beliefs and knowing our beliefs takes precedence over knowing our rulings or the ahkam of the things that we do in matters of deen, and salat and siyam and so on. And we learn of the usul al-deen, of the principles of deen, is these tenets, which are tawheed, nubuwah, tawheed, adl, nubuwah, imama and qiyamah. So knowing about our Imams falls under the imamah, falls under that important category. And the importance of the aqa'id is derived from the importance of the subject matters that they discuss. Talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the origin of the world, the origin of our existence. So indeed that is an important, or of the most important areas of knowledge that we could actually seek. Qiyamah, the Day of Judgment, where we're heading. Nubuwah, prophethood. And obviously we need to learn our ahkam. We have to learn our ahkam. We have to learn the rulings of, for example, salat. Why? Because we need to perform our obligations towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the right way, in the proper way, so that we reap the fruits, the spiritual fruits of these actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a reason that He commanded us that, for example, we perform wudu from the elbow. He could have commanded it, for example, from the wrist. But Allah wanted it from the elbow. Allah wanted us to do salat in this way, ruku' in this way, say these things in that form. Allah wanted it this way, not any other way. Because if you want to attain the spiritual fruits that are prescribed for you out of salat, you have to perform it in the right way. This is why we learn salat in its exact ahkam and exact rulings. Recently I led a workshop for the youngsters in the madrasa, a salat workshop. How to perform salat, what are the rulings of salat and so on. And there is something that I said, and ask Allah to forgive me actually that I said it. It may be true, but it may not have been the right thing to say. And that is, why do we learn salat from an early age? Why do we learn the ahkam properly? We have to make sure that we do salat properly from an early age, so that when we grow older, we don't want that we realize we've been doing salat in the wrong way and wudu in the wrong way, and then we have to repeat everything. This may be true, but in retrospect, this is not really the way to actually motivate people towards learning the ahkam of the salat at an early age. The actual right way to say it is we perform salat correctly from an early age, so that we don't miss out on the spiritual fruits that the proper salat is supposed to give us. May Allah forgive me, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our sins, our shortcomings. But there are certain ways of actually displaying things and teaching things. So this may have been something that I've been taught actually when I was younger. And you see, it may have remained unchecked and, it appears. So learning ahkam is important, but learning our aqa'id is even more important. So if you spend 1 hour learning your ahkam and rulings of the acts of worship that you do, you need to make sure you spend 2 hours learning your beliefs. They're much more important. The beliefs, my brothers and my sisters, represent the roadmap for the individuals. The roadmap for your life. If you get that roadmap right, okay, then you can go and learn your ahkam on that roadmap. You'd perform your salat, siyam, and so on. If that roadmap is wrong, then no matter how much salat you do, no matter how much fasting you do, in the correct, proper way, but your roadmap is wrong, your aqidah is wrong, you're probably worshipping the wrong God, you're being guided by the wrong Imam, so you will not gain the fruits that you're supposed to be gaining from those acts. And this is how we understand the narrations from Ahlul Bayt, when they would tell us that if someone actually, no matter how many times they go to Hajj, no matter how many days they fast, no matter how many prayers they offer, if they don't have our wilayah Ahlul Bayt, if they don't have the right beliefs, none of this will actually benefit them. Why? Because the foundations are wrong. So you need to make sure the foundations are right. So around these times where we commemorate the shahadas of our imams, the wiladas of our imams, we need to make sure that we actually spend some time learning about them. Read a few articles. Grab a book. Read a book. Start a book. A day before the event. A day after the event. If you're not of the people of reading, maybe listen to some lectures. Maybe listen to some ebooks. So make sure that you learn. If you know, refresh your memory. And this is what I do, to be honest. Before I come and prepare for these lectures, I go and refresh my memory. I go and read and learn. So I'm learning with you as well. And I'm refreshing my memory with yourselves. So, when we know more about the Imams, salamullahi alayhim, we actually realize the perfection of their lives. We love them more and we take them as role models in our lives. This is really what knowledge is about. Knowledge and learning is supposed to take us there. That when you learn about the perfection of the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you love that perfection. Your love for that perfection pushes you towards wanting to be like that. And therefore you take the Prophet as a role model. So you change your life. That's why we go and learn. This is why we actually come here and listen. This is really the reason that you go and transform your life, change your life, make it better. So we go to Imam Al-Kāẓim, salamullahi alayhi. Imam Al-Kāẓim, he's our 7th Imam, the 7th Imam of the Muslims, the 7th successor of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, by the will of the Prophet, by the designation of the Prophet of God. And he was born in the year 128 Lil Hijrah, and he left this world as a shaheed in the year 183 Lil Hijrah. So he lived in this world around 55 years, and he passed away with a poison during the time of Harun al-Abbasi, so the Abbasid Caliph, which was known as Harun al-Rashid, in the prison of Baghdad. The mother of Imam Al-Kāẓim, salamullahi alayhi, was a lady by the name of Humayda al-Barbariya, so the barbarian Humayda. This lady was from the barbarian nation and somewhere, I think, in the northwest Africa. It's an ancient nation, and they were also of the early followers of the Ahlul Bayt. عن المعلى بن خنيس, he narrated from Imam Sadiq salamullahi alayhi that he said about Humayda, the mother of Imam Al-Kāẓim. He said, Humayda musaffatun min ad-danas. Humayda is purified from any impurity. This great lady. The mothers of our Imams were the great ladies of their times. Humayda musaffat min ad-danas. She's purified of all impurities like pure gold. Imam says the angels continued to guard her until she was delivered to me as an honor from Allah. For me, and for the proof, for the hujjah of Allah after me, and for Imam Al-Kāẓim, as an honor for Imam Al-Kāẓim. These are the mothers of our Imams that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected, that these host and contain these holy Imams. Imam Al-Kāẓim, salamullahi alayhi, his imamat was actually the longest of our Imams. His duration of leadership, of responsibility, was the longest, 35 years. The next in line is that of Imam Sadiq, of his father, 34 years. Obviously, Imam Sadiq lived longer, but he assumed his leadership when he was older than Imam Al-Kāẓim. So Imam Al-Kāẓim, when he became an Imam, he was 20 years of age. After Imam Sadiq, salamullahi alayhi, became a shaheed in the year 148 al-Hijrah. So this is Imam Al-Kāẓim salamullahi alayhi, in these 35 years, he was in the service of this ummah, he was teaching, he was performing his responsibilities. Obviously, the last 5 years were difficult, where he was mostly in prison, moved from one prison to another, during the time of the Abbasid Khalifa al-Mahdi and then Harun, as inshallah I'll mention briefly towards the end. So, Imam Sadiq salamullahi alayhi, who would actually allude and point to the leadership, to the imamah, to his successor Imam Al-Kāẓim in different occasions. There are many narrations that will relate to us, mentioning that Imam Al-Sadiq clearly would say, the person after me, the leader after me, your guide after me is Mūsā, is my son Mūsā. In a narration, and Sulaiman bin Khalid قال دعا Abu Abdullah. So Sulaiman bin Khalid is narrating that Imam Al-Sadiq called Abu al-Hasan, called Imam Al-Kāẓim one day, and we were present, and he said, عليكم بهذا. And Imam Al-Kāẓim was obviously younger than 20, as we said. عليكم بهذا, adhere to this man. والله صاحبكم فهو والله صاحبكم من بعدي. For he is your guide after me. Very clearly, Imam Sadiq salamullahi alayhi mentioned this. As for the knowledge of Imam Al-Kāẓim, it was very evident and very obvious from his young age. A narration from Abu Hanifa, the one who is attributed or said to be the founder of the Hanafi madhab. Abu Hanifa, obviously, he was one of the students of Imam Sadiq. When Imam Sadiq was in Kufa, was in Iraq for 2 years, Abu Hanifa would attend the classes of Imam Sadiq, and he would say, had it not been for these 2 years, I would have been finished. لولا السنتان لهلك النعمان. Abu Hanifa would say, one day I went to Hajj, and I went during that Hajj season to Medina, and I went to visit Imam Sadiq, salamullahi alayhi, and I entered his home. فجلست في الدهليز أنتظر إذنه. So he waited in the corridor, and he was waiting for permission to enter. And at that time, a boy exited. And I said, يا غلام, oh young man, أين يضع الغريب الغائط من بلدكم? A stranger, where can he relieve himself in your town? A stranger is in a town. Obviously, there's no toilets easily. So where can someone do this? He's testing him. He's testing his knowledge, basically. So what this young boy said, he would obviously explain, what are the manners, what are the places you should actually avoid, and what considerations you need to take in this sense. And so that person, that young boy said, be patient. Then he sat leaning against the wall and he said, avoid the banks of rivers. Obviously, this is river, this is water. Avoid the banks of rivers. Avoid the places where fruit falls. Avoid the masaqit al-thimar, trees where there are fruits that are falling, because also people would go and take these fruits. Animals would probably eat from these fruits. The country yards of places of worship, the country yards of mosques, for example, avoid those. And the middle of the road, conceal yourself behind the wall. So these are some manners that you need to observe. Lift your garment, do not face the qibla. This is also some of the ahkam that when you go to the toilet, you shouldn't face the qibla. Make sure you don't. Neither what? Neither turn your back towards the qibla. So ensure that also, your toilets are fit in such a way. Otherwise, you'll have to kind of, twist yourself in a way so that you respect this ruling. And then relieve yourself wherever you wish. So Abu Hanifa was impressed by this answer. And he went further. He went to another level. So he asked him a question of ahkam, of rulings. Now he went further, because apparently this boy knows what he's talking about. And so he said, Ya ghulam, mimman al-ma'siyah. The sin is from whom? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything, right? Yes, Allah created everything. Okay, but there are things that we do. Didn't He also create these? So the sins that I do, the backbiting that I make, the cheating that I do, the stealing that I do, the lying, exposing people's secrets, for example, cheating. So all these sins that we do, also Allah created them, because He's the creator of everything. And this was a debate, this was a discussion point that was there during the early times of Islam. And some people went very far in these kind of discussions, very far in the wrong direction. And so he asked him that question, who is the sin from? So he said, this young boy, which I think you all know now, that he is actually Mūsā Al-Kāẓim, salamullahi alayhi, when he was young. He said, إِنَّ السَّيِّئَاتِ لَا تَخْلُو مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. There are three cases. There are three situations. Sins are one of three possibilities when someone sins. Either they are from God, and they're definitely not. That's what the Imam says. Either they are from God, and they are not. And so, it would not be befitting the Lord to punish the servant for something that the Lord did. We know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised that the sins are, they are punished. So there is a punishment after the sin. So if they are from Allah, if Allah created these sins, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us do the sin, that's what we mean. If Allah forced us to do the sin, why would He punish us for something that He did? And so it's not from God. First situation, cross. Second situation, or they are from both God and the servant, and they are not. Or they are both from God and the servant, so it would not be fitting for the stronger partner, who is Allah, to punish the weaker partner, who is the servant. And therefore, the second option is cross. So it's not a partnership in that sin, which leaves what? Or they are from the servant, and they are indeed from the servant. They are indeed from the people. The sins are our own accountability, our own responsibility. We've done it. So if God forgives, it is by His blessings, His generosity, and His grace. And if He punishes, it is for the servant's own sin and guilt. And Abu Hanifa said in that narration, I departed without seeing Imam al-Sadiq because I found sufficiency in what I heard. That was sufficient for me. In another narration, actually Imam al-Sadiq, Abu Hanifa asked, who is this boy? Imam al-Sadiq said, this is Mūsā, this is the successor after me. So this is something that shows the knowledge of Imam salamullahi alayhi from a young age and his successorship of Imam al-Sadiq by the explicit expression of Imam al-Sadiq salamullahi. Another narration, Abu Hanifa also one day told Imam al-Sadiq, he said, رَأَيْتُ ابْنَكَ مُوسَى يُصَلِّي. I saw your son Mūsā praying, and people are walking in front of him normally, and he was not blocking them. You know, in some of the other schools of Islam, if you're praying and someone wants to cross in front of you, you have to block them. You have to push them, right? Obviously, we don't have that in our fiqh. So Imam al-Sadiq, what he did, he called Mūsā. He said, listen to what this man is saying. Is this true? Answer him. He said, yes, O father. إِنَّ الَّذِي كُنْتُ أُصَلِّي إِلَيْهِ كَانَ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيَّ مِنْهُمْ. كَانَ أَقْرَبَ إِلَيَّ مِنْهُمْ. Yes, father, I wouldn't block them. Why? Because the one I'm praying to is closer to me than those people passing in front of me. Imam continues, didn't Allah say, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ? We are closer to him than his jugular vein, about man. Allah is closer to you than anything around you. So they wouldn't really block your salat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no, in our fiqh, you don't have to, prohibit or push or smack or whatever, or kick. So you continue your salat. Obviously, out of respect, people shouldn't do it. But on you as a person who's praying, right, you don't have any obligation to actually prevent it. And so Imam al-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi, he embraced him and he said, بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا مَوْدِعَ الْأَسْرَارِ. He embraced his son Mūsā and he said, may my father and mother be sacrificed for you, O repository of secrets. This is Imam al-Kāẓim. The worship of Imam al-Kāẓim salamullahi alayhi also is something phenomenal. It is narrated that Harun al-Rashid, when Imam al-Kāẓim was in prison, Harun al-Rashid would sometimes go and check. And check that prison where Imam was, and he would see him what? فَيَرَاهُ سَاجِدًا. He would see the Imam prostrating, sujood. And he would say للربيع, he would say to the governor, what is that cloth? What is that garment I see thrown? I see it every day in this spot here. And the man tells him, this is not a garment thrown. This is Mūsā ibn Ja'far. This is Mūsā ibn Ja'far. Every day, له كل يوم سجدة. Every day, he performs prostration after sunrise until noon. Every day. This is the position of the sujood of Mūsā ibn Ja'far salamullahi alayhi. In another narration, it is said that Imam Mūsā al-Kāẓim salamullahi alayhi once entered the mosque of Medina, the holy mosque, Al-Masjid al-Nabawi. And he went to a prostration, to a sajda from the beginning of the night. And he was heard say in that sujood, عظم الذنب عندي فليحسن العفو عندك يا أهل التقوى ويا أهل المغفرة. He would say, oh Allah, my sin has grown great. So let your pardon be beautiful, O one who is worthy of forgiveness. And he would say that repeatedly until morning. Imam Salamullahi alayhi. This is Imam Al-Kāẓim. His title obviously is Al-Kāẓim. Al-Kāẓim. The titles of our Imams, they are indications towards a certain attribute that actually was manifested very clearly in the time or the circumstances of that Imam. So Imam Al-Kāẓim, Kāẓim means the one who restrains. One who restrains the anger. Kadhim is when you actually cap the water skin. So when you have a water skin, you tie the top so that water wouldn't spill out. It's like you cap it. So this is used to describe what? That you cap your anger. You don't allow your rage or anger to actually show outwardly. Imam Salamullahi alayhi, in his social life, he would role model kadhmul ghayz. He would role model actually restraining the anger. Anger is one of the top problems in our social relations, my brothers and my sisters. In the hadiths, al-ghadab miftahu kulli shar. Anger is the key to every evil. Any issue that you may have with your wife, with your children, with your husband at home, with your father, mother, niece, neighbor, friend. So many actually start from what? From a moment of anger. And we have so many instructions from our Imams that actually this is something that we need to restrain. We need to train ourselves to stay in control, not allow our rage to actually drive us and pull us to where we shouldn't be. And more challenging than actually observing restraining your rage or your anger in the social aspect of your life, much more difficult actually is doing it in terms of the political circumstances. Our Imams lived so much harshness actually under the Abbasid caliphs. Circumstances that would push groups of people to go and revolt. With our Imams, Salamullahi alayhim, they teach us that actually, no, you reflect. You make your decision not impulsively. You're not driven by impulse. And so he was Kāẓim also in that. Imam Salamullahi alayhi witnessed 4 vicious, fierce khulafa. Khulafa, kings I mean, not khulafa. Not successors. Kings. Kings of the Abbasid dynasty. One is Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. Then his son al-Mahdi. So Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, Imam witnessed him for 10 years. Then his son Muhammad al-Mahdi. Then his 2 sons, Mūsā al-Hadi and Harun al-Rashid. And very interesting names, by the way. Very interesting titles these people had. Very interesting. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, the one who was supported, from Allah. Abu Ja'far, the butcher. He was a butcher, actually. Abu Ja'far, who killed Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyya and his brother Ibrahim, and he threatened Imam Sadiq many times with killing. And eventually, actually, he poisoned Imam Sadiq Salamullahi alayhi, where he instructed the governor of Medina to offer the poison to Imam Sadiq. And after Imam Sadiq Salamullahi alayhi attained Shahada and became a martyr, this Mansur would command the governor of Medina saying, go and find who the successor and the heir of Ja'far as-Sadiq and go and kill him. Then the governor went only to find out that Imam as-Sadiq willed in his will to 5 people. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur himself, his son or the son of the Imam, Abdullah al-Aftah, Mūsā al-Kāẓim, Humayda, and the governor of Medina. And so the Imam encoded his successorship in that will in this way. So he protected Imam al-Kāẓim Salamullahi alayhi from that plotting of that Khalifa, of that king. So that was Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. His son, Muhammad al-Hadi, so Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, it is reported that he would actually mention to his son, so they had something like a dungeon of skulls. And in that there were skulls of the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. Telling him that, when you take the throne, remember to walk this path. Continue that path. Then his 2 sons, Mūsā al-Hadi. Mūsā al-Hadi was someone who contested with his brother in terms of the Khilafah, on the throne. And he actually attempted to poison his own mother to death. That's Mūsā al-Hadi. Mūsā al-Hadi was the person who actually suppressed and oppressed the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam so much that they led a revolution. They led a revolution the leader was someone by the name of Al-Husayn bin Ali al-Khair. of the followers and the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and there was a massacre that was done against them. More than 100 people from the children of Fatima salamullahi alayhim were massacred, were killed, were beheaded, including children. Some of them were crucified. And that was known as Waqat Fakh. It is narrated that this was actually the most painful tragedy on the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam after the events of Karbala. It was a massacre. So this was Mūsā al-Hadi. So these are the kind of governors that the Imam, or the kind of rulers or kings that the Imam salamullahi alayhi had to live under. And then came his brother after it, Harun al-Rashid. Rashid the wise, Harun the wise. So Muhammad al-Mahdi, the guided one, and then Mūsā al-Hadi, the guide to what? Guided to what? Rashid in what? Wise in what? Interesting how actually the Muslim Ummah, we're living in a way that actually we take history and we never revisit it. Majority of the Muslims, they never revisit history. Khalas, that was the history that was actually decided by the authorities, and we take it as it is. Rashid, he was wise. And you hear stories about his wisdom. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supports us with some time to talk about these people, what they did to the Muslim Ummah, the corruption that they had. And this Harun al-Rashid, he had, although he had such a big kingdom, he would speak to the cloud and he would tell it, go wherever you want to be. Wherever you go, the crops that will grow because of you will come to me. That's how vast his kingdom was. Even despite that, there was poverty in the Muslim world. And Imam Al-Kāẓim salamullahi alayhi had that responsibility to what? To help those poor people, to help those who need support. Some people would come to him. There was something that was known to be what? The surra of Mūsā, the money that Mūsā Al-Kāẓim salamullahi alayhi would provide to people. A bag of money, for example, 300 dirhams or something to help people who are in need. The corruption that was in this state or by these kings is unfathomable. One story, for example, was that this Harun known as al-Rashid, known as the wise, Harun the Abbasi, he once actually saw a woman, a slave woman, and he wanted to have her. And she told him, well, I was with your father before, so it's not permissible actually for you. And what he did was actually he spoke to one of the muftis, one religious scholar. He said, come on, find me a solution. And what this mufti told him, he said, we don't have to believe her. Says who that if she claims something, you have to believe her. So go, bismillah. You can take her, you can buy her. And so he went to the owner in that kind of market of slavery. And then he said, I want this. And then that person said, well, she's for 100,000. So he gave an astronomical number, 100,000 dinars. And the minister of Harun, he said, okay, let's do it. And out of spite, he said, I'll give it to him in change. So 1 dinar is 10 dirhams, coins. And so there was a pile of money, 1 million dirhams. Pile of money. Go, take. This was one sample of this corruption that our Imam salamullahi alayhim had to see. And obviously the difficulty that they lived was to an extent that the companions of Imam Al-Kāẓim salamullahi alayhi would have to conceal their connection with him, would have to conceal any communication they would be having with him. And they would talk about him, naming him, Haddathani, for example, Al-Abdul Salih, the good servant of Allah spoke to me and said 1, 2, 3. They wouldn't say Mūsā Al-Kāẓim. They wouldn't dare to mention his name because of that oppression that could reach them. So when Harun one day came to Medina, it is said that he went to the Prophet, he went to the shrine of the Prophet, and he said, "O Prophet, I'm about to do something with Mūsā ibn Ja'far because he's disuniting the Ummah." SubhanAllah, these propaganda claims that these people do till this age. Propaganda. It's a principle for the followers of Shaitan. He's disuniting the Ummah, Mūsā Al-Kāẓim. Although there's no record that actually he associated with any revolution or any activity against the government. Nothing. Disuniting the Ummah. Why? Because people are gathering around him. People are attracted to the light of his knowledge, wisdom, generosity, humility, worship, light. So he has to go. Then he commanded that 2 caravans should leave Medina, one to Basra and one to Kufa, with curtains covering these caravans, and the Imam was in one of them. He was in the one to go to Basra, so that he would be imprisoned in the prison of Isa ibn Ja'far, who was the cousin of Harun, the cousin of the king. And that person saw the piety of the Imam in that prison, saw his devotion. Imam Salamullahi alayhi would have a dua in that prison. He would say, "Oh Allah, you know I was asking you to free me for your worship, and you did that, so praise be to you." Imam is thanking Allah for the prison. Why? Because now it's his time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with no distractions. And so that prison manager, he wrote to Harun. He said, "Look, I have no reason to keep this man in my prison. Either take him or I'll release him. There's no reason for him to stay here." And so the Imam was moved to Baghdad, to the prison of Al-Fadl bin al-Rabi'. Fadl bin al-Rabi', who was also one of the ministers, one of the governors, and who witnessed also the value of Imam Al-Kāẓim salamullahi alayhi. And the same, so he passed him to the prison of Al-Fadl bin Yahya al-Barmaki, and the same thing happened. Until Harun commanded that he is moved to the prison of someone known by As-Sindi ibn Shahik. That Sindi was known of his hatred to the Ahlul Bayt, of his hatred to the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. A man whose heart was filled with hatred towards the Imam salamullahi alayhi and the lovers of Ahlul Bayt. As-Sindi cast the Imam into a dark dungeon, chained with heavy iron, his legs bound with shackles that cut into his flesh. And there the Imam, your Imam, our beloved, was starved. There he was beaten. There he was forgotten. No one knew him in that place. No one could tell day from night in that dungeon, in that pit. The air was so thick that breathing itself became a struggle. It is said that when the Imam salamullahi alayhi would feel suffocated, he would move closer to a small opening in the dungeon, just to breathe. And whenever the Imam would approach that, and As-Sindi would see him, he would strike the Imam across the face and push him back into the darkness. Someone would say, someone saw the Imam in that prison, and he narrated that when he prayed the Isha Salat, he would praise Allah and glorify Him and supplicate until he would not stop. He would not stop until the night has passed. Then he would stand and pray until Fajr, and then remain in dhikr until sunrise. After that, he would rest for a while, clean his teeth with a miswak, eat what little food he had, and sleep until noon. Then he would rise, perform ablution, pray again, and remain facing the Qibla in dhikr until Maghrib. And between Maghrib and Isha, he would continue in prayer. That person observing, he said in awe, he said, "The people who harm this man are surely doomed." The suffering of the Imam became so severe that the Imam salamullahi alayhi would raise his hands in prayer. He would say, "Ya Sayyidi najjini min habsi Harun. Oh my master, save me from the prison of Harun. Deliver me from his hand, O you who bring forth the tree from sand and clay. O you who bring the fire from iron and stone. O you who release the soul. O you who releases the soul from within the depths of the body. Khallisni, khallisni." Day after day passed, and the burden grew heavy upon the hearts of the lovers of Imam salamullahi alayhi. So they would ask the Imam, those who were able to reach, they would ask him, "O Imam, matal faraj? O Imam, when will all this end? O Imam, when will the relief happen? When will you be out of prison? When will we be able to see you?" The Imam would reply, "On such day, on the bridge of Baghdad is our time that we will meet." And that day came, and on one side of the bridge, people gathered smiling, congratulating each other, celebrating, this is the day that we will see our Imam again. But brothers and sisters, on the other side of the bridge, there was a janazah, people holding a janazah, a body being lowered on the floor, and someone crying out mockingly, "This is the Imam of the Rafidah, come collect him." In the prison, the wretched As-Sindi had placed poison in the Imam's food. Imagine the body of the Imam in those hours, still shackled in iron chains, as poison spread through him, burning his insides, breaking his strength while the shackles remained locked upon him. No farewell, no companion to attend the Imam during his last times. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين إلى أرواح المؤمنين والشهداء الفاتحة.